Over the course of the last year, tens of thousands of people have lost their jobs, and many of them will not have jobs to go back to when this is all over. I was listening to the news the other night, and they were spotlighting this dilemma and referring to those that had lost their jobs as having to remake their lives, look for new vocations, new jobs, new careers. There is a sense in which not only those who have lost their jobs and not have jobs to go back to have to remake themselves, but all of us have to go through a sense of remaking when this is over, for our lives have been totally altered by the pandemic and its attendant consequences. Whether or not we have lost our job, it has been changed. The way we do business, the way we interact, will never quite go back to what it once was. Even those who have retired have had their lives changed, as they've been required to step up to the plate to provide education and respite care for children and grandchildren. Businesses have altered the way they do business. Even church is no longer the same. We've been pushed into a new realm of online. What will that look like in the future? Our communities have been altered. Our nation has been changed. All of it is in the process of being remade, whether we like it or not. It's not a new concept. If we read the pages of the Bible, there are stories galore of how God has remade those who thought they were pretty much stable. Good old Abraham and Sarah were comfortably enjoying retirement when God called them out to start a family in a new nation. Jacob was running for his life when God brought him back to his brother and reunited them. Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers and yet becomes a high-ranking official in the Egyptian government, and in the end becomes the instrument of salvation for his family and for the nation. Moses was a fugitive from the law, and yet God uses him to restore his people, to lead them through the wilderness and into a promised land. David is a shepherd boy become king. The prophets are dressers of sycamore trees or youths, and yet God uses them. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego are all exiles, and yet find a place in the Babylonian government. Throughout the history of scriptures, God is continually remaking. Out of death comes new life. Out of lostness comes being found. It is the story of the New Testament and Jesus' teachings on death and resurrection. Martin Luther talks about each day being an opportunity to be remade, to die to the old and to rise to newness of life, a gift of God's grace. Rather than looking at our present condition as hardship, what if we look at it as opportunity for a new life, a new way of being? Not necessarily better, but different, although sometimes it can be better. What have we discovered in this time? What have we learned how to do that we never did before? How can we use this as we move forward? How can we be more creative in the way we look at life? How can we change our attitudes toward one another, toward God? All of this is an opportunity to grow into a deeper relationship with God and with our neighbors. And in the process, perhaps even learn something about ourselves. The pandemic does not have to be a catastrophe. It can be an opportunity to grow into God's grace and to listen to his voice in the wilderness that calls us into a new land, into a new way of life. How clear is our vocation, Lord, when once we heard your call to live according to your word and daily learn, refreshed, restored, that you are Lord of all and will not let us fall. But if forgetful we should find, your yoke is hard to bear. If worldly pleasures fray the mind, and love itself cannot unwind its tangled skein of care, our inward life repair. We marvel how your saints become in hindrances more sure, whose joyful virtues put to shame the casual way we wear your name, and by our faults obscure your power to cleanse and cure. In what you give us, Lord, to do, together or alone, in old routines or ventures new, may we not cease to look to you, the cross you hung upon, all you endeavor done.